Kalimera, good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you, Father John and Stella and Philoptohos for providing us this opportunity. We have a lot going on today at Annunciation, as we do most Sundays, which is good, which means we're together celebrating and learning. So let's get started. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce our most distinguished speaker today. Dr. Anthony J. Limberakis has been an Archon of the Ecumenical Patriarchate since 1987 and a member of the Archon National Council, the governing board of the Order of St. Andrew since 1988. He has served as National Commander of the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, Archons of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, since 1998. A 1975 graduate of the University of Pennsylvania with his bachelor's and master's, and 1978 graduate of Duke University School of Medicine. He is a practicing radiologist in Philadelphia and a member of the radiology faculty of the Thomas Jefferson University, Sidney Kimball Medical College. Of course, we know Anthony personally as Brother Anthony, since he shared his mother and father with us, Father John and Presbytera Elizabeth, of recent blessed memory, for over 20 years as our spiritual leader. We also know Anthony's wife, Dr. Maria. Many of you know her as your doctor, and past organist, and many other roles serving our community. We remember from our 50th anniversary celebration last year that Maria's father and mother, Dr. Anthony and Lillian Borden of blessed memory, are the reason we are sitting at this very spot, since they were the head, heart, and hands of our community established at 7921 Old York Road, now for 50 years. In addition to establishing and leading our community for decades, Maria's father, Dr. Anthony, was also a founding Archon and National Commander for the Order of St. Andrew. What a dynamic duo, both the Limberakis and Borden families, squared. Finally, twice last year we were blessed with having His Eminence Archbishop Epiphanes of America with us, and he praised that our Annunciation is a leader in many ways, including being the 6th oldest Greek Orthodox church in America, the first Greek Orthodox church in Philadelphia, our philanthropy, outreach, and youth ministries, and from the leadership of the likes of many of you in this room, including the Limberakis and Borden families. Here's an important question. Who will be our leaders at Annunciation Elkins Park in the next 50 years? I think the answer is us. Our children in this building must be. So now, let us learn and celebrate our Annunciation can continue to be a leading Greek Orthodox community. Dr. Anthony J. Limberakis.
Thank you, Brother Archon Peter. If I may take a moment of privilege and a moment of a silent reflection on the extraordinary legacy of my beloved parents, my beloved in-laws who spent so much of their lives at this parish for the glory of God. Eternal be their memories. I'll just say quickly that this is the very third time I'm wearing the medallion of the Order of St. Andrew that belonged to my late father-in-law of blessed memory. And I wore it for the first time at the Great and Holy Council in Crete, the first such council in 1,000 years. I wore it again at the funeral of my mother a couple of weeks ago, and I wear it today in honor of my beloved parents. Eternal be their memory. Before I start, can you all hear me? I just want to quickly let you know what's on the tables, and then we'll go to the presentation. Number one, hot off the press, our annual report. You'll see the depth and scope of the mission of the order to fight for the existential threats that confront the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Feel free to review it. If you have any questions, I'm available. We'll have a Q&A afterwards. This is our latest newsletter in which we feature the Athenagoras Human Rights Award, which was given to Patriarch Theodoros II, Patriarch and Pope of Alexandria and all Egypt, and we'll refer to that in the presentation. This pamphlet discusses the major issues of religious freedom that confront the Ecumenical Patriarchate. We have these cards. We call them Rocky cards because they were developed by one of our newer Archons, convert, Rocky Sisson, very devout, and on the front you'll see an icon of St. Andrew, an image of his All-Holiness, and the great Church of Christ, St. Sophia, and on the reverse side, key facts regarding these important issues and people. And finally, in your envelope is a packet on the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew Foundation, the only foundation in the world dedicated to the financial security of the Mother Church. No other foundation, no other endowment in the world. The Archons started this a few years ago. We've received pledges for over $20 million, and it's something that I'd like you all to consider. We even include a pledge card. So we'll start the program with a 6-minute video clip that was produced by the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese for the bicentennial, or I should say the centennial anniversary of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America. An archon is a term used for leader. In fact, it originated in the 8th century BC when it referred to the ancient leaders of the city of Athens, the first democracy. The Order of St. Andrew, unlike any other organization in the world, has a singular focus, a laser focus on the well-being and the religious freedom of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, the spiritual center of the world's 300 million Orthodox Christians. We are comprised of archons. What is an archon?
Well, archon actually comes from the ancient Greek world. It means leader, the one from the beginning. So it's an ancient Greek title. And it's probably the oldest honor in Christendom.
The role of the archon in the function of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese and the metropolises is very, very significant. Virtually every major position of the Archdiocese held by a layman is held by an archon of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. And it's good that they're led by archons because that archon always has in the back of his mind to promote the Mother Church. And in that context, when you promote the Mother Church, you're also promoting its most important eparchy, the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America.
So basically the traits of an archon go back to the Lord and Savior first. He said the greatest leader amongst you will be the greatest servant. So we look for service from an archon. We want from his wisdom, and we want from his vision of the church and how he serves the church.
And it was founded and originated by Archbishop Iakovos of blessed memory, who was the exarch or representative of the Ecumenical Patriarch. And in this case, in 1966, the Ecumenical Patriarch was Athenagoras, the great Athenagoras. So at that time, he conferred the title of Archon to 30 individuals, men, who were distinguished leaders of the church, who exemplified their Christian stewardship at the local level, at the diocese level, at the archdiocese level.
Ultimately, you want somebody who's a servant leader. And if they do that, they're thinking of their brother and their sister, they're thinking of the community, they're thinking of the mother church, they're thinking of the archdiocese, and they're looking at everybody as a church family.
So I have had the great honor and privilege to serve as the national commander since 1998 when Archbishop Spiridon appointed me. And I serve at the pleasure of the Exarch, the Archbishop of America, our Archbishop Elpidophoros of America. But in 1998, when I became the national commander, I have to say, with humility and great pride in the Archon team that we've assembled, that there was a metamorphosis that took place in the order. It really morphed into an honorific organization which recognized the achievements of great laymen in the church, almost a lifetime achievement award status, if you will, to a dynamic, active, some people say hyperactive organization in which we developed initiatives domestically in the United States and internationally around the world to promote the religious freedom of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. What do you mean by religious freedom? Well, the government of Turkey does not even recognize the Ecumenical Patriarchate from a legal perspective. It has no corporate identity. So if you don't exist in the eyes of the government, you have no rights.
We have a religious freedom objective. So the first thing is to make sure that the Ecumenical Patriarchate has the support of what we hope is the United States government. We bring it to the attention of our brothers and sisters in America. America is still the land of the free and the home of the brave. So we ask them to speak about freedom bravely and talk about what religious freedom means for us in Constantinople and other parts of the Orthodox world. That's one of the elements. The other thing is that we ask them to use their resources. So therefore, we ask them to support the Ecumenical Patriarchate. We've established the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew Foundation to secure the financial future of the Ecumenical Patriarchate around the world. When you're talking about becoming an Archon, it should not just simply be what you did. It's what you're doing. And that has really been developed in the past 10 years by Dr. Limberakis and the National Council of the Order of St. Andrew.
And finally, the constant recruitment of our children and grandchildren, raising them up in the church, passing the baton to them, to become ambassadors of the Ecumenical Patriarch. Archons are ambassadors, they are soldiers. And the two together result in the strengthening of the Mother Church here in the United States, the most important eparchy of the Mother Church, because the United States is the most powerful country in the world. And by virtue of that, we're able to support the Mother Church with the full backing of our U.S. government. So those are all positive things that we envision will continue over the generations to come, God willing. I want to begin the program by giving you a global picture of world orthodoxy. As you all know, there was one unified Christian church for 1,000 years, and it was made up of the 5 most important cities in the Roman Empire. Rome being the most senior, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. These churches are called apostolic churches. Why are they called apostolic? Because they were founded by one of the 12 apostles of Christ. The Protestant church is not apostolic. That started in 1530 by Martin Luther when he protested against the Catholic Church. So we had a church united for over 1,000 years, and then what happened? The Roman Catholic Church broke away. But the Pentarchy, the 4 remaining churches, the Orthodox churches, stayed united together and consist of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. We just said that a little while ago in the Creed, right? We number over 300 million, and we are composed of independent I shouldn't say independent, autocephalous, meaning there's independence but unified unity of faith and worship. Our faith and worship are one. And these are the 15 autocephalous churches of the Orthodox Church. First being the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, and now if you go down to the second column at the bottom, the most recent autocephalous church, the Church of Ukraine, that was granted autocephaly by only one person, and only one person can do that, and that is due to the 28th canon that took place in the Fourth Ecumenical Council. We go back a long, long time, you'll see. And that was the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, who was given the right to grant autocephaly to various churches. Orthodox churches, these are countries that have majority faith of orthodoxy, and the percentage. And you'll see a great Slavic representation, Russia, Ukraine. Romania is not Slavic, but highly Orthodox. Even in Africa and the Middle East, if you look at Ethiopia, Ethiopia has 46 million Orthodox Christians. It's amazing. 46 million, 44% of their population. And those are Orthodox countries. So it was the 28th canon, the Fourth Ecumenical Council, that gave the right to grant autocephaly by the Ecumenical Patriarch by putting the jurisdiction of so-called barbarian or barbaric churches outside the Roman Empire to the Ecumenical Patriarchate. By virtue of that canon, the New World, North and South America, Australia, all the areas that were not in existence during the time of the Roman Empire, because of the Fourth Ecumenical Council, Canon 28, granted jurisdiction of those peoples, those lands, to the Mother Church. So 1,572 years later, we find ourselves here in the United States under the jurisdiction of the Ecumenical Patriarchate due to the vision and foresight of the Holy Fathers of the Church in the Fourth Ecumenical Council. Now, if we go closer to the Middle East, and in particular Turkey, when we talk about Middle Eastern Christians, in essence, we are talking about 2/3 Orthodox Christians, 1/3 everybody else. 2/3 of the Christians of the Middle East are Orthodox. And when we talk about religious freedom, we live here in the United States. Any given Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you could go to your mosque, synagogue, or church, and no one's going to give you a hard time about it. That's in only 30% of the country, of the world. 70%, there are heavy restrictions according to the Independent Pew Foundation. Now, this is an interesting scatter plot. The vertical axis is social hostilities against minority groups. Social hostilities meaning groups, individuals, organizations that perform violence against minority groups. The horizontal axis is government restrictions, official policies, dicta, and rulings of the official government. If you look at Turkey, the GRI, the government restriction index, is very high at 7.0. The social restrictions, hostilities, is also high, meaning the people, the organizations of the Turks in the country have animosity to the Christian minority. And again, this is by the Pew Research Center, an independent organization. And you can see where Turkey has been jumping up and down, but mostly in the upper right-hand worst case scenario area. At the turn of the last century, in the early 1900s, 10% of the population in the Middle East was Christian. Now it's 5%, and it's even less than that, but I could not get more recent figures. If you go to Constantinople around the turn of the century, 1900s, 20% of Constantinople was Orthodox Christian. Today, 0.0, not even 0.1% is Orthodox Christian. I know we have some Constantinopolitans here. Kathy, good to see you. So, as His All-Holiness would say, we are a small Christian drop in a vast Muslim ocean. Yet God's grace has deigned us to survive, and they have survived. And what is Constantinople? It is the confluence of Islam and Christianity. Why has the Greek Orthodox Christian population been destroyed in Turkey and Constantinople? Because of official policies of ethnic and religious cleansing. The Ecumenical Patriarchate. Let's review the significance: canonical, ecclesiastical, historical. This was our cathedral for almost 1,000 years. Hagia Sophia, this was our cathedral. A magnificent, and it was the great Church of Christ. Why was it called the great Church of Christ? Because it was the largest cathedral in the world. This is our more modest cathedral today, St. George at the Fanar. This is the inside of St. George. One of the most inspiring witnesses you could have when going into this cathedral is seeing the actual relics, and I'm a radiologist, so I know the bones of people inside and out, but the actual relics of St. John Chrysostom, St. Gregory the Theologian, St. Basil the Great. These saints, their relics are in this church. And also there is the pillar of flagellation in which Christ was tortured. He was chained to the pillar and he was tortured. And that's there as well. So it's really an extraordinary and moving experience. His All-Holiness. And Archbishop Elpidophoros of America is the exarch. What is exarch? Exarch means representative. He is the representative of the Ecumenical Patriarch. That's his official title. And that puts him at the highest rank in this country because he represents the Ecumenical Patriarchate and His All-Holiness. His All-Holiness, this is a great book. It's on Amazon. You can get it easily. It was written by Father John Christophe, and it's a compilation of various chapters of individuals who knew His All-Holiness, who know His All-Holiness, and they wrote from their perspective. One of my favorite chapters was written by Pope Benedict. And Pope Benedict said in his chapter, you know, Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew speaks 7 languages. So right away, he makes people feel at home and connected, eyeball to eyeball, as I think Agora said. So when someone at a press conference raises a question in Spanish or in Italian or in German, he responds in that same language. And the connection that that engenders is really just incredible. Now, people sometimes confuse the numbers, the 269th and the 270th. So, His All-Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch is the 269th successor of St. Andrew, who was the first apostle of Christ. He was the absolute #1 apostle of Christ. His brother, Peter, founded the church in the West, and Pope Francis is the 285th successor of Peter, and Andrew is the 269th successor. Bartholomew is the 269th successor of Andrew. He is the leader of 300 million Orthodox Christians. He is first among equals, Paris into Paris. He is known for his ecology and preservation of the ecology. He brings religious leaders together. He's a great environmentalist. He's known as the Green Patriarch. He's had environmental symposia all over the world. the Mississippi River, the Amazon River, the Nile River, the North Sea, the Baltic Sea. And he brings scientists and theologians all together. And they have a 4-day symposia combining ecological issues, theological issues, political issues. He's honored at the White House by all the presidents. But I have to say, President Biden has the closest relationship with His All-Holiness, without question. He visited His All-Holiness twice as sitting vice president. He's met with him as sitting president when His All-Holiness was here. Here's Mike Pompeo, the 70th Secretary of State. The United Nations has honored him. Congress gave him the gold medal, the highest award Congress can give an individual. And people, George Washington, Winston Churchill, people like of that ilk receive that award. But one of the watershed events of the work of the Order of St. Andrew was the 60 Minutes interview with Bob Simon. You all remember Bob Simon. It was a famous question. Bob Simon posed to His All-Holiness, do you feel, Your All-Holiness, that you are being crucified sometimes in your own country, being crucified? And what was his answer? Yes, I do. And that statement really is iconic of the relationship of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, the individual, the patriarch, and the government of Turkey. They crucify the institution and the person. And then after the 60 Minutes, I have to tell the story about that 60 Minutes. I happen to have been honored by the Federation in New York and be the parade leader of the annual Greek Independence Day parade. And the other person who was honored was a gentleman named Nick Devatsis. Nick Devatsis was the founder of the A&E television network, which gave birth to Discovery and a bunch of other TV stations. Really humble guy. And his son became a professor of geology at Temple. When he told me that, I said, well, I can help him locate a house and come and visit. So they came, they got a house not far from where we live. And I told Nick, I said, we have this religious freedom issue with the Ecumenical Patriarchate. I wish we could get something like 60 Minutes. You think that's doable? And so Nick says, the chief editor of 60 Minutes owes me a huge favor. I could cash in a lot of chits right now, and I can give her a call and set up an appointment. Nick, that would be unbelievable. 60 Minutes? You gotta be kidding. #1 news program in the country forever. So that's what he did. So I go to 60 Minutes CBS headquarters in New York. I bring a shopping bag full of evidence of stolen properties, confiscated properties, interference in elections of ecumenical patriarchs, and I say, listen, don't believe me, just get your research staff and look and review these documents. So about 6 months later, I get a call, I think you may have something. We're going to send a team to Istanbul. So they send a team to Istanbul. They meet with His All-Holiness. They interview His All-Holiness. And then I call Father Alex Carluzzo, says, Father Alex, you got to close the deal now because it's all set up. They're there. You got to close it. So he goes to Istanbul, the Fener, and the deal is closed. A few weeks later, they send a television crew of 5 or 6 people. They do an unbelievable interview. And we gave 60 Minutes the Athenagoras Human Rights Award. There's Bob Simon. And here's the whole crew. And it led to 7 other Orthodox 60-minute programs. That one little program led to the Jews, the Coptic Christians in the Middle East, the monks of Mount Athos. They even have 2 programs on St. Nicholas. So it was really a tremendous blessing. I call it providential blessing that Nick Devatsis and I happened to be the leaders of the parade. We got to know each other. He made a telephone call I did the legwork, and the rest is history. And what's interesting is Bob Simon was born on May 29th. Everyone know that date, May 29th? That's the day Constantinople fell. It's a very historic day. So when I saw his date, and unfortunately he died prematurely in a car accident, not wearing a seat belt in New York City in a big limo. And that didn't save him, even the size of the car. But God rest his soul. And when, every Thursday, 60 Minutes does a preview of their upcoming Sunday program. So Thursday, when they previewed, "Do you feel crucified in your own country?" Yes, I do. The Turkish government went ballistic. They called CBS. "You can't air that on Sunday. We'll protest this and that and this and that." And this is Bob Simon telling me. So I said, "Mr. Simon, how did you react to this?" "We didn't pay attention. We just did what we felt was right." And 60 Minutes is a double-edged sword. So when we brought this up to him, there's always the risk with 60 Minutes that they won't go the way you want it to go. But our case was so strong that it was just unbelievable. So what are the issues that confront the Ecumenical Patriarchate? What are the religious freedom issues? Number one, the government doesn't recognize it as a legal entity. And as I said earlier, if you're not recognized by the government, you don't exist. You don't have rights. You can't do anything. That's the case of not only Christians and Jews, but Alevi Muslims. If you're not a Sunni Muslim in Turkey, you have no rights. Alevi Muslims, 15 million Alevi Muslims, 10 or 12% of the population, are treated like Christians, 0 rights. We cannot buy, sell, or alienate property. Another huge issue. So in 1936, during the beginning of the new Republic of Turkey, the Republic of Turkey required all foundations, all churches, all charitable organizations to register their properties. So we, the church, registered over 10,000 properties, properly designated properties with ownerships and documentation. And then by 1999, there were only 2,000 properties left. And now, less than 500. So how does that happen? How it happens is by attrition. You have a building with a board of trustees. The roof leaks. You go to the authorities for a permit. You have to get permits, right? Even here, you have to get permits. You built St. Anna. Where are you, Mr. Kaldis? You had to get permits, right? You got a permit. Well, in Turkey, we didn't get permits. So the roof would leak and leak and leak. The roof would cave in. The floor would flood. The walls would cave in. It became a hazard. So the government, for the safety of its citizens, would take over the property. Why? Because they wouldn't let us fix it. We had the resources to fix it, the manpower to fix it, but we didn't have the authority to fix it. And that's what happened. So from over 10,000 properties to less than 500. And now currently those 500 properties are maintained by boards of trustees, Orthodox Christians. Some of those properties are the most costly properties in all of Istanbul on the Bosporus, worth millions and millions of dollars. Anyway, so that's the situation there. The other thing regarding properties is they're taking ancient churches. Hagia Sophia, Jimmy, Hagia Sophia is now a mosque. Jimmy Malitas used to come to our radiology office and talk with my father-in-law for hours. Remember that, Jimmy? Yes. The two were buddies, and they used to come, and Jimmy would bring his medical things, and my father-in-law would talk to him. Then when my father-in-law went to the kingdom, Jimmy would still come, and I had the privilege to speak with him and talk about medical issues and issues of Constantinople and the Mother Church. And I'll always remember your daddy, who lived to what, 102, 3, 4? 107. I remember my father going to his 100th birthday of blessed memory. Zui Samas, Jimmy. Anyway, now they're converting. This is Hagia Sophia, what we knew it to be. This is it today. This is what the Turks have done. This is what we call cultural memoricide. They're trying to erase the whole memory of Christianity. This is what's going on every Friday night at Hagia Sophia. Listen. These are thousands of Muslims lining up. Now, this is taken from the rooftop of St. Sophia. This is inside Hagia Sophia. Can we close the middle lights, please? And you hear the imam. They have a dedicated imam to Hagia Sophia now, chanting the Muslim Islamic chants. This is Erdogan here. And these are all men in the mosque, now mosque, built as a church, was a neutral museum for a neutral museum, and then Erdogan, in a very provocative action, converted it to a mosque. And this is them praying in the mosque. And other churches that were classic churches, built as churches, became neutral museums, were then converted to active mosques by Erdogan. This is Imonitis Chora. The iconography here is unbelievable. Unbelievable iconography. This is the famous icon of the Dormition. You'll notice the rope around the feet, symbolic of the ever-virginity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, Theotokos. That's what it was on the right, on your left, and this is what they've done. They've covered all the iconography. It's shocking. Another church in Nicaea, the creed we just enunciated at the Annunciation in Greek and in English. Well, this is where it was developed, in Nicaea. And that was a church and now is an active mosque. Another church in Trabzon was a church, neutral mosque, museum. What else do? They interfere in the election of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. His All-Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch. How do they do that? And I'll tell you how they do it, but what we believe as Orthodox Christians is that the person on the far right, His All-Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch, is a direct successor of St. Andrew, the first apostle, who is directly connected to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And what do the Turks do? They put a separation between the Ecumenical Patriarch and his immediate successor by interfering in the election. So we believe as Orthodox Christians that the synod who votes for the Ecumenical Patriarch is inspired by the Holy Spirit. That's our Christian belief. But these guys say, no, we will determine who will become Ecumenical Patriarch. First of all, he has to be a Turkish citizen. Well, why does he have to be a Turkish citizen? Because the governor of Istanbul in 1923 issued a tazkere, a legal document that states that the Ecumenical Patriarch must be a Turk. And on top of that, 50 years later, the government issued a talamat, another legal document that states that not only must be a Turk, but if you don't follow our instructions on the election, then the government has the right to scratch off names. And they've done it time and again, except in the case of Bartholomew. When George Herbert Walker Bush's national security advisor, Brent Scowcroft, and Father Alex spoke, called the government of Turkey and said it would be in the best interest of the United States if the next ecumenical patriarch had a free and clear election with no interference. And Bartholomew won that election. Chalki, another issue, was closed 52 years ago. 52 years ago. Extraordinary seminary, the only seminary of the Ecumenical Patriarchate in the local area. It's been closed over half a century. Empty classrooms. But I want to give you a little history. You keep hearing Chalki, Chalki, Chalki. What is Chalki? Chalki was a seminary. It was operational for 127 years. It graduated 1,000 clergy, a third of whom became bishops, and these are the numbers, 12 of whom became ecumenical patriarchs. 2 were elected Patriarch of Alexandria. That's the second-ranking patriarchate of our Orthodox Church. And others. Archbishop Iakovos of blessed memory is a Chalki graduate. Another issue that's not as important is the term, the Turks don't use the term ecumenical. Not a huge issue. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't. We don't make a huge deal out of it. But it was in existence since the 6th century, the 500s. The Turks have a program of daily intimidation going back decades and decades. I mean, since I've been a national commander in 1998, they've thrown bombs at the Patriarchate. They've tried to prevent synod meetings from going on. They even had uncovered an assassination attempt by this Turkish ultra-nationalist organization called Ergenekon, the Grey Wolves, if you will. And they had an assassination attempt on His All-Holiness. The Archons bought a bulletproof car for His All-Holiness. $200,000 we raised out of our pockets to buy a bulletproof car at the advice of security people that we trust, and we get advice from the highest sources in our government. And we did that so that His All-Holiness could travel with relative security. So Runciman wrote a great book, The Great Church of Captivity. Is there an issue with that beep? Okay. So of the 159 ecumenical patriarchs from the 15th to the 20th centuries, 21 died of natural causes, 105 were driven away by Turks. I'm going to go back. 6 died violent deaths, perhaps the most famous of which was Gregory V. Gregory V, 1821, on Saturday, Easter Saturday, 1821, a few weeks after March 25th, when Greeks declared our independence from the Ottoman yoke. The Turkish group, authorities, broke into the Fenar, the Ecumenical Patriarchate, grabbed Gregory V, the sitting patriarch, Ecumenical Patriarch, took him out to the gate and hanged him. And that day is commemorated by the Ecumenical Patriarch every April 10th. And this is the gate that has since been sealed, never been opened before, since that hanging in 1821. And the Turks realized that they persecute us. Bartholomew, do we persecute him? The answer is yes. This is a monastery that was rebuilt by doctors Archon Stephen Limberakis from Kingston, Tennessee, and his wife, also a dentist, Dr. Stephen is a MD DDS, so he's a head and neck surgeon. And they rebuilt this monastery only for authorities of the forestry ministry to tear it down and destroy it. We want freedom of speech and freedom of religion to become available to the Mother Church, but those policies in Turkey not only stayed in Turkey, but came into the United States. How did that happen? A few years ago, outside the Turkish embassy, in the presence of Erdogan, American citizens were protesting Turkey's lack of human rights. There were American citizen and Turkish people who were protesting outside the Turkish embassy where they knew Erdogan was. Erdogan sees this, and all of a sudden his security team goes out to the demonstrators and beats the living daylights out of them. Washington police were called. They finally disrupted the melee, if you will. But all along, that individual was witnessing what was going on, Erdogan. And this video and these pictures were taken by the New York Times. Turkey must restore basic, fundamental religious human rights to the Ecumenical Patriarchate. And what do the Archons do about this? Well, we have programs in the United States and in Europe. In the United States, we participated in a historic ministerial to advance religious freedom. What is a ministerial? Secretary of State Pompeo, the 70th Secretary of State of our country, under Trump, issued a ministerial in which he invited over 1,000 diplomats from around the world to come to the State Department of the United States to talk about how they can advance religious freedom. We had the privilege of participating in that as Archons in a very significant way. Here's Mike Pompeo. Archbishop Elpidio Foros gave a great presentation on Chalki and what's happened to Chalki, the significance of Chalki. We just talked about that earlier. We witnessed his presentation. This is the right-hand Archbishop of Metropolitan Epiphany of Ukraine, who's under siege as we speak today. And that's Archbishop Efstrati. And when the Order of St. Andrew bestowed the Athenagoras Human Rights Award to Metropolitan Epiphany of Ukraine, I was talking to this gentleman in Kyiv, setting up the logistics and bringing him over, who's coming with them, where the order hosted them. This archbishop is a Coptic Orthodox archbishop, Angelos, a wonderful individual. Do you folks remember this picture? These were Coptic Orthodox Christians who were then beheaded by ISIS. They were his communicants. They were his parishioners, and they were beheaded. And he points out this individual who felt so humbled that he didn't even want to look. He turned his head away. They were canonized by the church. And during this ministerial, the Archons had what they call a sidebar. A sidebar is a conference that goes along with a major conference. So we had a sidebar in the Capitol building during the religious freedom ministerial. We had the Speaker of the House, a big deal, and we had members of Congress, both from the Senate and the House, hear presentations on religious persecution, not in general, but religious persecution of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople. It was a very significant event. Here's His Eminence, the Archbishop, and the Exarch meeting President Trump. And you'll note, not only is Vice President Pence there, but Archon Alex who was the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Lebanese extraction. The Vice Secretary of State with the Archbishop. Here we are with the Vice President and then receiving the Athenagoras Human Rights Award a few years later. We work closely with USCIRF, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and every year they publish a list of the most egregious religious freedom violators in the country. And there's His All-Holiness with the Speaker a couple of years ago when he was here, with Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, in the Oval Office. And the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom publishes a list of the worst religious freedom offenders in the world. And guess whose name appears year after year after year? Turkey. And what initiatives has the order done to promote religious freedom, not in general, but to the Mother Church itself, is our state legislative initiative. So in 2008, Archons from all over the country approached their state legislatures to ask them to pass a religious freedom resolution in favor of to promote religious freedom of the Ecumenical Patriarch. Again, not just a general religious freedom, but religious freedom for the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Now, if you think that's easy in North Dakota, when there are a handful of Orthodox, but we relied on Jews and Christians, Protestants and Catholics to help us, and 46 states have passed resolutions of religious freedom for the Mother Church. I'm very proud of the Archon team who did that. Stephen Georgeson of Atlanta leading the way there. The Athenagoras Human Rights Award is a way that we could draw the world's attention to religious freedom for the Mother Church. The Nicholas J. Boris Award. Nicholas Boris was an extraordinary Archon, and we give that award to one Archon every year who exemplifies tremendous demonstration of time, talent, and treasure. And here Mike Psados received it last year. Very worthy candidate. The Archons also give a Sophia Award for excellence. And here Dr. Nawoff, at that time an Archon candidate, and Boris and Juliana Gurov, Bulgarians, who led the way for the religious freedom mission that the Archons took place, they received this recognition and very worthy to do so. We have a Sprout initiative educating our youth. This is Mrs. Kronos of Chicago. We have Dr. Papatheas, who, by the way, when he went to medical school here in Philadelphia, what church did he go to? Annunciation. So we've known Greg Papatheas for decades and decades, a wonderful regional commander and Archon. And you know, he's always told me, Dr. Anthony, you gotta always use your middle initial. You gotta honor your dad. He was an unbelievable priest. So, you know, I've always used my middle initial, and I use it to this day because it's a way to honor my beloved father. So I'm proud to say that. So we have regional commanders of Pittsburgh, Nick Terezas and Senior Nicholas Tranto, outstanding Archons who've really developed this program for the youth, giving out the pamphlets and bling, I don't know what the proper term is, but nice souvenirs, if you will. There's Judge Kronos. We also established engagement committees. What are engagement committees? The Archons have 10 engagement committees. We give our Archons the opportunity to select a committee of their choice, whether it's the academic symposia, the communications committee, social media, metropolis and parish education. I think, Peter, you're involved in that, and others. So everyone has a chance to pursue their diaconia, if you will, their diaconia for the Holy Mother Church. The Archons in the past 20 years have made direct and indirect contributions of over $58 million that benefited the Mother Church. I'm very proud of that. We have assembled an extraordinary team. We need more Archons in this church Annunciation, so I hope you folks hear that. We need Archons. So what have we done in Europe? Well, the U.S. Embassy in Ankara, I used to go to with frequency. Now I fear for my safety when I travel to Turkey. For me, because I'm an outspoken critic of the government and the President of Turkey. So I don't go for my personal safety, but others go, and we encourage people to go. His Eminence, Archbishop Elpidophoros of America, did a great job and a great service to the Mother Church by leading 4 pilgrimages during the centennial celebration of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, bringing countless pilgrims to the Mother Church. So these are the European venues. The European Union has a rotating presidency country every 6 months. We periodically visit those countries. The U.S. Embassy in Ankara we used to go to, now it's not safe for us. The European Court of Human Rights, we have a great story to tell there. And the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which holds the largest human rights convention in Europe every year, and we send an Archon delegation there. Here's the European Court of Human Rights. This is the court case in 2008, a long time ago, in which they confiscated the pilgrimage, the orphanage, rather, of the Ecumenical Patriarch. The Ecumenical Patriarchate, the orphanage that we had in Principos Island. It went to the European Court of Human Rights. We proved to them that we had the proper legal title, and it was returned to us with a unanimous decision of the European Court of Human Rights. Here we met in Geneva with His All-Holiness, again, years ago, with Jay Sekulow. You know Jay, right? He was the President Trump's attorney for a time. With Metropolitan Emmanuel, now Chalkidonis, the second-ranking bishop of Orthodox world. At that time, I believe Deacon Elpidophoros, now Archbishop of America. John Zavitanos, great litigator and attorney. Metropolitan Militon George Rakis, Father Alex. So we met and discussed legal strategy at that time. We even brought a human rights attorney in from Ankara, who now is in hiding because of the person. He's an outspoken critic of the government, a Turk. And here we are years ago, meeting in Hungary when they had the European Union presidency, a few years back when Austria had the European Union president. And it was interesting because this particular president, chancellor of Austria, Sebastian Kurz, was the youngest head of state in Europe, and the metropolitan of Austria was the youngest metropolitan of the ecumenical throne. So it was young folks. We meet with the minorities of Turkey. And here's Laki Vingas, wonderful, devoted son of the Mother Church. And we talked about Alevi Muslims. Well, this gentleman here, Dogan Burmet, he's the leader of the Alevi, the 15 million Alevi Muslims. And this took place not far from the Fenar, this meeting. Here we are with Erdogan himself when he was in New York. It's an interesting story I'll quickly relate. When I went to Istanbul the first year I was national commander, in 1998, we visited the then mayor of Istanbul, Erdogan, the mayor of Istanbul. We asked His All-Holiness, well, what should we say? Just say, you came to pay your respects to the Mother Church. Don't bring up any issues. Be low-key. So we were low-key. He gave us one of those cocktail books. You see, Istanbul? And then he autographed the book. You see the date? August 31, 1998. I was appointed national commander January 1998. Led a pilgrimage of 125 people. Go to 2011. Here's his card as mayor. He re-signs it again, years later. that goes to show you that we're in a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon to seek the religious freedom of the Mother Church. Nick Boris, Mr. Galdis, you know Nick Boris. He came with us in 2002. We donated a tree to the September 11th Memorial Orchard that was at the U.S. Embassy in Ankara. Years later, we came back, and there's the memorial tree that we had there. So the Archons have been at it relentlessly, and it's not over yet. Until when we hear the bells of freedom ring at the fanar, then we'll relax. Until that day comes, we are on guard and working day and night. I have a conference call this afternoon at 4 o'clock to discuss our next Religious Freedom Conference in Athens. I hope you all come. But this is Vice President Biden at the fanar. He went twice in 2011 and 2014. I happened to be present at one of the meetings. It was quite an extraordinary visit to see the sitting vice president, and we had an extraordinary luncheon with him as well. But that was a tremendous visitation of the sitting vice president to the Mother Church. Amen. We also send every year religiously 2 individuals to the OSC meetings in Warsaw, Poland. And here we give presentations on the persecution of the Mother Church by the government of Turkey. And we meet, and we do this in conjunction with the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. State Department, and we're well known. So when we go to Europe, a lot of the people know us from our presentations at the OSCE meetings. We've been invited to give a presentation at Oxford as well. That was a great privilege. And these are scholars from around the world at Oxford. And then we participated in the Holy and Great Council, the first meeting in 1,300 years of pan-Orthodox Christians. Extraordinary. The last time it happened was in 787. 787, the last such meeting. 10 out of 14 Orthodox churches, autocephalous churches, participated. You should all know it was a unanimous decision to have the meeting in Crete. Unanimous. Then at the very last minute, the Russians pulled out. And under their influence, several other autocephalous churches pulled out. But we know that the Russian Orthodox Church is hyper-national, and they put nation over church. Look, the complicity of Patriarch Kirill in the atrocious, horrific war against brother Orthodox Christians in Ukraine. The complicity of the Church of Russia. This was the Great and National Holy Council. The Archons raised over $1 million for that. We had Archons do all the IT work, lay the framework, what's the term I'm looking for? The fiber optics. Patriarch of Daniel of Romania. And we paid for simultaneous translations. So some of these hierarchs didn't speak Greek. Many spoke English. Some didn't speak, they spoke their own language. And we had simultaneous translations for everybody. And we had the privilege with Judge Bazanelis, the National Vice Commander, to be present at that. We recently came back from a religious freedom mission in an area of the world that's under great hardship, suppression, and that is those countries near Ukraine. We had the privilege to go to Romania and support the work of Dr. Salome, now an Archon, and the Alexandrian Foundation. Dr. Salome is the founder of the foundation of the EPBF. We met with the top civil and ecclesiastical leaders of Romania, the Prime Minister's office. I'll go through the religious leaders. Always go to the U.S. Embassy. Wherever we are, we go to the U.S. Embassy. From Romania, we went to Bulgaria. And Boris and Juliana Gurov, outstanding. Boris is an outstanding Archon. His son now is a student at Columbia in New York. And Juliana, extraordinary, devoted Christian husband and wife team. What a team. What a team. Here we are with the Bulgarian Prime Minister, the first pro-Western Prime Minister of Bulgaria. You know, this was a Warsaw Pact country, right? Bulgaria was Warsaw Pact. They weren't NATO. They're NATO now, but they weren't then. So they were a communist country. This was a communist country. And this was the first pro-Western prime minister that we had the privilege to meet, thanks to the efforts of Juliana and Boris Gurov. We had an outstanding meeting with the Metropolitan Athenagoras of Belgium. Then we met with the parliament. So he was the prime minister, then we met with the parliament. And this is the Archon side of the room, and this is the president of the parliament. And we talked about religious freedom. We talked about Ukraine. You know, Bulgaria refused to pay Russia for oil in rubles. They paid in dollars. That took, you know what it took. Okay. This is at the ambassador's home, the Greek ambassador. We always pay our respects to the Greek ambassador. And this is meeting with the Patriarch of Bulgaria. The U.S. Embassy again. And then we go to Greece. Why did we go to Greece? Because we're planning our Religious Freedom Conference in Athens. An Archon is the U.S. ambassador to Greece. Can you believe it? George Tsounis, fantastic Archon, fantastic ambassador, and it's a thrill to have met him in Athens as U.S. ambassador. He gave a reception for His All-Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch. We had a great dinner that the Archons hosted, Ambassador Tsounis hosted at the Niarchos Foundation in Athens, the Cultural Center, a magnificent event. Here's Andreas Trakopoulos, the president of the Niarchos Foundation. Great Archon, great philanthropist. And now we're beginning to work with the Archons of Europe, Pamakaristos Archons. So this gentleman here is Thanasis Bartinos, president of the Pamakaristos Archons of Europe. This gentleman here is Gerasimos Fokas, vice president. And we had an informal luncheon where we started connecting. We exchanged emails. We have their mailing address. In fact, I just made arrangements for our annual report to be mailed to all the Archons of Europe, so they'll know what we do, because when we have our meetings next May of 2024, and you're all invited to this Religious Freedom Conference, there'll also be another conference a day or two later of global Archons from around the world, and that's when we'll be talking about how do we work synergistically. Here we are together. We had the privilege to meet with His All-Holiness on important matters. We've had 3 religious freedom conferences. Our 4th will be in Athens in 2024. We're beginning to plan that. We met with Metropolitan Theodoritos, who is the representative of the Ecumenical Patriarch in Athens. We met with Prime Minister Mitsotakis. Great meeting. He is all in. He's all in on this conference. He can't wait for us to be there. I hope you come. You gotta come. I'm looking at you guys, eyeball to eyeball. You gotta come. It's important. Kathy, you gotta come. Madam President, Please consider it. Jimmy, go with your brother. You know, you got to come. You just came back from a pilgrimage. Come again. We want you. Father John, you got to come. Mr. Delegalis, think about it, please. And here's giving an award, the Sophia Award, to the ambassador and Olga Tsunis. I was at their child's baptism 15 years ago in New York. So I've known the Tsunis family a long time. They have a wonderful mother, Mrs. Tsunis, whose husband was an Archon of blessed memory. And this is, we met with the rector of the University of Athens. Here we are with the representative of the Ecumenical Patriarch. The Minister of Education, Niki Kerameos. What a dynamic minister. They put together an incredible book on the religious edifices that have been destroyed by the Turkish government. The Patriarchal Office, by one of the ship owners whose work is will help us with the foundation, with the conference. Mitera Hospital, the mayor of Athens, Kostas Pakoyannis, also all, and they offered all the Athens. Think of Athens, the birthplace of democracy. We're going to have a religious freedom conference with an emphasis on democracy and human rights. What better city in the world could you have in none other than Athens, Greece, the birthplace of democracy? The mayor was saying, well, you could have it at the Agora, you could have it at Zapion, you could have the top floor of the mayor's office, the mayor's building. So it's really very exciting. We met with his Beatitude, Archbishop Hieronymus, the Archbishop of Athens. We met with the Minister of Public Safety. You know, where security is important. Security is very important for this conference. We met with the Minister of Defense. The Minister of Defense is a fellow Quaker. What do I mean by that? He graduated the University of Pennsylvania. Now, I graduated much earlier than he. I'm older by 10 years, but he's a Penn Quaker, just so you know. As is the current ambassador of Greece, Mrs. Papadopoulos, to the United States. She's also a Penn Quaker. And this is the foreign minister. We met with the director of Patriarchal Press and Communications, where we are arranging, the Archons are going to underwrite streaming services for the Mother Church. So when the Mother Church has Easter, has Epiphany, and all the other holidays, religious holidays, we are going to underwrite the streaming, and we're getting special satellite connection. It's going to be first class. Ted Vagelos, who's the Archon Communications in Boca Raton, has done this for over 300 parishes of the GOA. Then we went to Monte Carlo. His All-Holiness, we were planning to meet with him there, but his sister Zacharo passed away during that time. And we continued to make our presentations on the foundation and on the order in Monte Carlo, but without his All-Holiness. His Eminence Yaron Metropolitan, Senior Metropolitan of Chalcedon, was there, and he led the delegation. New Archons were invested in Monte Carlo. We were involved in the autocephaly of Ukraine. I won't go into the detail, it's complicated, but it took the bravery, the courageousness of the Ecumenical Patriarch. Despite the pressure of Putin, despite the pressure of Erdogan, he stood up to them and granted autocephaly to the Ukrainian church. 40 million Orthodox Christians in Ukraine who now have an autocephalous church, their own bishop, not under the thumb of Moscow. And who do we thank? The Ecumenical Patriarch. And this says it all. This is not a matter of interference in the internal affairs of the Church of Russia, because Ukraine does not lie within its jurisdiction. Nah. So there's Epiphany, who is the Ecumenical Patriarch, who is the Patriarch, or I should say the Metropolitan of Kiev. Metropolitan. This is the actual Tomos. This is like the Declaration of Independence for the U.S. This is the autocephalous tome, handwritten manuscript that is All-Holiness signed. And there's Metropolitan Epiphany, who will receive this from the hands of the Ecumenical Patriarch. Again, the only person who could grant autocephaly in the Orthodox world. And here they are to do the two of them together. And then what do? We gave the Athenagoras Human Rights Award to Metropolitan Epiphany of Kiev. And we worked, and we thought this was a great recognition and brought to the world's attention the issues of Ukraine. Now I want to talk to you, the final subject is the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew Foundation, the EPBF. This is the only financial instrument in the world dedicated to the perpetuity, the safety, and well-being of the Mother Church. No other endowment, no other foundation does that except the EPBF that was created by the Order of St. Andrew with the blessings of the Archbishop and the Ecumenical Patriarch. And what did we do? We named it after His All-Holiness. Why did we do that? Well, he's the longest-serving Ecumenical Patriarch in history. 32 years. No one comes close. No one comes close. So he's the longest-serving, the most impactful, the most dynamic, the most courageous, and he stood up to the world and granted autocephaly to 40 million Ukrainians. And it's a global initiative. We're bringing this to Australia, Canada, Europe. And it began in the United States by the Archons. I happen to be the chair. It's a 501c3 endowment recognized by the IRS for all you economic type people, finance people here. It's also recognized by the Attorney General in the state of New York as a charitable organization. These are the purposes of the endowment, the foundation, the Board of Trustees. And let me tell you something. We've received pledges of almost $22 million. We have 195 pledges. But when we, the Archons, sat around, and actually John Katzimatidis' office boardroom to organize it, we met a year every month for a year. We didn't meet at the Archdiocese. We met at the boardroom of John because there was a better environment at the time. And we insisted on women being on the board. Women being on the board. So we have two fantastic women on the board, a past president of Philoptochos, Aphrodite Gaddis, and another outstanding woman volunteer, Maria Alwyn, whose family is from Imvros. You know, what great lineage there. And there are women on the board. We have 195 founders. The Order of St. Andrew is a founding benefactor and founding member. The inaugural dinner was attended by the Ecumenical Patriarch. The Archbishop, of course, was there, along with Metropolitan Emmanuel of Chalkidonos. Mike Pompeo was the keynote speaker. He's the one who did the ministerial to advance religious freedom. He was there. His wife, Susan, Orthodox. Their son, Nicholas, Orthodox. Bet you didn't know that. This is the Board of Trustees. And what's great about this Board of Trustees is you're going to see young people in their 40s and older people. So it's really an extraordinary Board of Trustees. We have an investment committee chaired by John Koudounis, who's the CEO of Kalamos, outstanding group. Again, we have young investment types on the committee and older sage investment people, all pros. An audit committee, second to none. This was a top 10 auditing company We do everything by the book, by the letter, dot every T and dot every I and cross every T. I want to recognize Nick Boris, as I do often, because he's an extraordinary Archon, and he offered through his foundation a $1 million matching grant. If every metropolis of the GOA offered a $100,000 sponsorship, he would match it and add 2. So the 8 GOA metropolises each pledged $100,000, as Maria and I did, and he matched it 1 for 1, plus he added another 2, so $1 million from Nick and Anna Boris. There are 6 founding organizations, from AHEPA to Leadership 100 to National Philoptochos, and we have 10 founding parishes. There are 10 parishes in the United States who are founders. How do you become a founder? You can make a check of $100,000. Not too many people can do that. You could do a $10,000 a year check, or you could do like we do, Maria and I, is $833.33 a month on a credit card. And we do that every month. We also do it for St. Nicholas, but I'm talking about the EPBF. And it's a way to give directly to the Mother Church. It doesn't go to St. Nicholas. It doesn't go to Holy Cross. It goes straight to the Mother Church. The monies are controlled in the United States by the Board of Trustees. And the guys who do this are the top in their field. The investment team is no one better. They are top in their field. So we, the foundation, the Board of Trustees, respectfully invites the Church of the Annunciation to consider becoming a founder. This would be a great addition to the 10 churches that are already founders. We can do it. We can do it. I also offer a personal invitation. Many of you are blessed with the resources to do it. Think about becoming a founder. There's no greater satisfaction. And I tell you, the more you give to the church, the more you're blessed. Right, Father John? And after all, the Mother Church needs you and you and you and you and us as a team. Become a founder or a builder. What's a builder? A builder is under $100,000, payable over 10 years. This is a pledge card. You have a pledge card in the packets. Please review it, think about it, pray over it. For God loves a cheerful giver, right? St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. Now at this time I say my adieus, my appreciation and respect, of course, to His All-Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch, to His Exarch in America, His Eminence Archbishop Bubitheforos, Father John Johns, thank you, sir. Madam President Stella Fistas, very grateful for the invitation. And look at this rainbow. Isn't that divine intervention? That's not coincidence, that's providential. That is providential. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and now I will entertain any questions if you have any. If not, thank you for your attention. Yes, sir.
Going back to,
Is there a mic that we can give Mr. Delegalis?
that's okay.
Because it's being filmed.
Yeah.
Going back to the religious liberty for the Patriarchate, it seems to me that the best forecast is for Turkey to become more Western-like.
So,
But it seems a lot of people right now are feeling that Turkey can turn it on.
yeah, so Turkey is not looking west like it was before to become a member of the EU. They're looking more east to Iran, Russia, those kind of places. And, this is, Byzantium, Chronos measured in Byzantium is not days
or hours or weeks. It's decades, sometimes longer. O toquerò aquino, that time will come. You know, the iron wall came down, the iron curtain came down. This will happen, but we cannot lose sight of the goal, and we will continue to work towards that goal. And I see the Goyans are chomping at the bit to do their sights and sounds, and Father John is approaching the podium. So my time is up. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to Philoptochos, thank you, Stella, and thank you, Dr. Anthony Limberakis, for this wonderful presentation.